Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Reverse Shot Happy Hour. My name is Eric Hines. I'm curator of film at Museum of the Moving Image. This is the Reverse Shot Happy Hour for Wednesday, December 30th, the last of 2020, the year that we're all so terribly sorry to see go. If you're joining us live, thank you for doing so. Also, apologies for a few minutes delayed. We are at Museum of the Moving Image. This is actually an off week. We're usually showing a lot of films because it's the end of the year and it's our curator's choice, and it's a buoyant place to be these days since we're still shuttered. At least the building is. We are all off this week, so there's something a little bit like doing something while the parents are away about this particular edition of the Reverse Shot Happy Hour. So thanks for bearing with us for being a few minutes late. If you're finding us later on this week or at another time in the future, thanks for finding us. Hopefully, no matter when you're watching, this is still going to be a fun happy hour to be a part of. Just again, we've been doing this since the spring. We're last one of the year. We have just another one left to remain in terms of this season of the Reverse Shot Happy Hour. Our hosts will give a little bit of sense of what's coming up and what the plans might be going forward from that. But I just wanted to thank them all for doing this every week and providing a sense, a possibility for connection and community during these difficult months. I know that I'm not the only one who's really looked forward to this every week. And with that, I'd love to bring out our hosts and my dear friends for the Reverse Shot Happy Hour, editors and founders Michael Koresky and Jeff Reichert, and longtime contributor and filmmaker Farihah Zaman.
Hello, Eric.
Hello, Jeff.
How are you?
I'm all right.
Okay.
Hi, everyone.
Jeff and Farihah.
Hey, it's us.
Always lovely to see you.
See you guys in a little bit.
See you later.
So this is our second to last show for a bit.
It is. It's been a really rewarding and sometimes challenging and overall, kind of wonderful long haul, I would say. And I'm feel so warm about it and so happy to have done it with the two of you.
Yeah, I know, but keeping a live show going. I mean, I can't imagine these people who do live shows every single day. I mean, like poor Hoda, for God's sakes. I mean,
I was going to say, who does daily live shows? But of course, everybody on television.
Well, it's interesting to come to it as people who want to talk about film and be with others, as opposed to people who are naturally inclined to host a show or speak in public or whatever. And then it's like doubly weird to just refer to this as speaking in public, or when I think about having stage fright and it's like logging into a Zoom and I only see the faces of my friends, but yeah, I guess it's been really wonderful, but then at times the format can kind of highlight what's difficult and what's missing in this time, and it's been complicated, I think.
Yeah, I feel like I've learned so much. Let's talk about the things we've learned. No, but I if I had to do this in a theatrical setting or in some sort of live space in front of people every week or ever, I would probably be much more panic stricken. This has given me a little more confidence in speaking publicly.
Oh,
If this is speaking publicly.
That's great. I think I miss the energy of other people in the room. And I really respond to that. Like, Jeff, that's how I feel when we pitch projects. Like, how would I know what to talk about if I can't see how people are responding? And I noticed this because I taught a class this semester, as did Jeff. Michael, did you also teach this semester?
I taught last year, but it was my first time teaching.
Yeah, it was really uncanny feeling like I can't read the room because there's no room. And I think I missed that aspect, but I don't know, we got to experiment visually and in ways that are kind of more in line with the cinematic medium at times. And I really love thematic programming. I always have, in ways both basic and perhaps more intellectually valuable. I enjoy that focal point, and I think that's been really fun and exciting, and kind of a way for us to collaborate that we hadn't done before.
Yeah, and so next week will be the last show for a little bit, and I think we're going to take a little time off after doing this straight for 7 months, something like that.
Whenever May.
We're gonna think
20
about
months, 25 months.
we started in May, I guess. So we're gonna think about what the future could hold for Reverse Shot Happy Hour, how it looks, what other kinds of things we could do with this, because it is a new format in a way. Like Farihah said, it's it has sort of certain kinds of cinematic potentials that can be explored beyond just sitting here looking at our faces. I wish we'd done more cooking. I really liked when we had Julia and Steve on, and Julia made those onions for us.
Maybe next week, who knows?
Well, you never know. Next week, we should say before we move on, because we don't want to get too bogged down. But next week, our last happy hour is also, by coincidence, the Feast of the Epiphany, January 6th, which is the name of the movie that we made, and it's about togetherness, and it's about the past and reckoning with the world, and there'll be a lot of stuff to talk about, but maybe also there'll be some food.
Yeah, perversely the theme is feasts, which I don't care what everybody else is doing after the new year. I want to continue the indulgence and gluttony of cinematic and culinary feasting.
Yeah, I mean, so today, this is sort of our New Year's show, and it's a good time because on Reverse Shot, we're starting to roll out our coverage at the year end. I mean, our top 10 will be up sometime next week, probably in advance of the show, but just today we published two big things that we wanted to point everybody's attention to. One of them is a really wonderful article by Imogen Sarah Smith about film comment and what film comment has meant over the past couple of decades. And it's a beautifully written piece. It's very moving, I think, which I don't know that you often find in pieces about film magazines, but I think she really kind of like takes it on in a wonderful way. And we've also made a film, which we wanted to quickly, before we have our guests out, show a little clip of. So you want to explain the film while I get the clip cued?
Farihah, you can explain.
Why are you doing the like Molly Shannon move?
No, that's Stefan.
I'm sorry, it's Stefan, your celebrity twin.
As soon as I'm going to be talking and it's going to be horrible. So.
No, and I'm excited. I'm really excited to show this to people. And I think it's part of why we're in a reflective mood, even though it's only our second to last show, not our last show, because I actually think the subject matter of this film dovetails with a lot of why we chose to do Happy Hour, and our sort of just loosely held enough to leave room for creativity belief system about making work. Reverse Shot is very interested in the intersection of one's creative pursuits. And I think for us, it means that there's a less of a boundary between making films and reflecting on films and the way that you do, whether it's written or a cinematic essay, or the ways in which we've experimented with like the filmmaker interview format over the years. I think it's all about trying to understand visual language and to see criticism as an equal creative exercise as making film, which I believe very deeply. And I think that those things inform each other very much so. For the three of us, and thinking through some of these ideas when the Museum of the Moving Image invited Reverse Shot to be part of the First Look Film Festival sort of symposia and do a day-long workshop. Those ideas coalesced to form our workshop, which was inviting a number of critics and filmmakers who were showing work at the First Look Film Festival to answer this deceptively broad question of why do you do what you do. And during the day, there was some writing, there was a film exercise. It was really fun to watch people cross the line into working in a media that they may not have before, to watch people who'd only made films sit down and have to write and reflect on it, and to watch people who typically only write about films pick up a camera, document the day, go through the interview process. And we made the film that you're about to see a small clip of from that material. So we shot on it, but so did all of the people who participated in the workshop. And it was, it's wild because we did that the day before the city really locked down. And the festival was canceled. We had a lot of behind the scenes questions. We really didn't understand what COVID meant. I remember we were like, no, it's okay, we'll take precautions. And to us, that meant like, we'll have a lot of hand sanitizer. Like nobody knew yet to wear a mask. It was just such a specific time to be the last gathering. And we just didn't know any better, but it's hard to regret because it was the last time that we were able to gather and talk about something that's very meaningful to us. And then we completed the film during the pandemic, and having that sort of nostalgia or meaning about it. So anyway, this is a resulting film that sort of explores, like the workshop did, the nature of making and creative work and why we all do what we do.
Cool. I'm going to try and do this with share and hope that it works.
And just so everyone knows, yes, you can go and watch this directly on the Reverse Shot site later if you want. This is just the beginning. This is only the beginning.
See a dark screen? You guys see a dark screen?
We can. Why do you do what you do? Why? And that's just going to be 5 minutes. Don't think about it too much. Yeah. Go on instinct. Does not have to be perfect essay. Okay, pencils down.
So in this room, we want, as Ben has started to do, to document the discussion.
So focus is here.
This is the Zoom.
Emma just texted 1:30 as her.
And don't worry about making it look amazing or whatever. This is just get what you think is interesting, and you can move around.
Meanwhile, in this space back here, if you can see the exit sign, the hallway before the projection booth, we've created a space in which you can have a little bit of more intimate time, more of an interview format.
Logan, nice to meet you. Nice to meet you.
Okay, so who wants to be the director first, and who wants to be the participant?
You're cool. I'll drive first. How
Okay, and
about
did you both bring what you wrote?
I've always wanted to understand how films work and unpack my feelings about them, since that area is so inherently messy and hard to articulate, and especially to understand and untangle films that seem like confusing to me or murky in some way.
Okay, so that's the beginning of the film, and you can you'll meet more participants as the film goes along and see some clips from movies and get a better sense of what we tried to accomplish during those few hours that we had together on the last day that we could actually be together.
It was a really fun day. It's really fun to see critics wielding cameras. I love that. So moving on, so we can bring in our guests today.
It is time for resolutions. We have filmmaker Stephen Cohn and professor and writer Shonni Enelow here, who are meeting for the first time today, which is very exciting for us.
Seems impossible to me.
It seems impossible.
They should be old friends. Hey, Stephen. Hey, Shonni.
Hi.
Hi there.
Unmute yourself.
I'm muted, sorry. Hey guys.
Welcome.
Is that a Madonna song? Unmute yourselves.
Yes, it's really good.
I can make dad
think you
jokes
wrote
too,
it.
okay? Welcome.
Thanks. So happy to be here.
For being here. So this was the way we sort of pitched today was that we'd be talking about New Year's movie resolutions, and of course that's a very broad topic, which is intentionally so. And you're two of the people that we love talking about movies more than anyone in the world with. So we sort of felt like this would open up avenues that we didn't expect, because everyone has such distinct individual experiences with film, especially in 2020. So before we kind of move on to 2021, I'd love to hear kind of how your 2020 was in terms of movie watching. I feel like this has just been, I mean, we've all sort of been in our own little cocoons, but we've all had different viewing methods, ways of coping, ways of watching. So Stephen, let us, what has it been like being a movie lover in 2020 for you?
I mean, I was thinking about the answer to this today, and it's sort of a kind of maybe a shameful thing, but in many ways it was realizing how many of my normal habits didn't change, you know, and how many movies I normally watch at home. I feel like I'm a decent person. I feel like one of my points of hypocrisy in my life is sort of championing the theatrical experience and like encouraging people to go. And yet this year has shown me that no, you definitely watch most of the movies you see in your apartment. And I say that with, I mean, that's just me being candid. So that's one thing. I did find myself, again, for better and for worse, rewatching old favorites. Most of my viewing this year was very American, for better and for worse. So there was a sense of like going, not necessarily like full on like comfort watches, but being pulled to things that are, and not even easy, but just like, I'm probably gonna love this and need this, and let me jump in here and do that. Not to mention I probably watched a couple hundred more movies than I normally do. But yeah, no, it was a great year of movie watching. I'll save my other part of that answer for 2021. But there were habits where I was like, we gotta make some changes. So I gotta make some changes.
Take a hard look in the mirror.
I got changes.
Well, I appreciate your honest self-reflection, because I think it is, I realized while preparing for the show that the thing about discussing resolutions is actually acknowledging what you want to change. So this is an emotionally intense show.
Oh, I've got plenty more. Let me know when we get to that part of the show.
So first we're going to wallow in what has happened.
Yes, please.
Johnny, wallow with us?
I'd love to wallow with you. Well, that I love that, Stephen, because actually, like, I am sort of on the diametric opposite of that spectrum of like movie watching being the same this year, being totally different, because I feel like my relationship to film completely transformed this year, like in a really profound way, and I'm still sort of taking account of it. It's actually something that I'm like still trying to process, and I was trying to process it in preparing for this show. But unlike I dare say most reverse shotters, film is not my first love, like as an art. Theater is my first love, and literature is sort of my second love. And it's not that I didn't like film, but it's really that, sort of in my in the last I would say 6 or 7 years that I've gotten really interested in thinking about film. And, I've only been writing about film for about that amount of time as well. And so I always have this sort of sense of, that I'm still catching up in a lot of ways. And this was the year that I feel like I both went to film school and with my Criterion Channel membership. And I also just completely changed the way that I was interacting with the art form. I mean, this is the year that for me, film eclipsed every other art. Like, it was the art that I was interacting with. And I was interacting with it in a completely different, much more habitual way. There was a period of time when the shutdowns first happened in New York in March and April, when my 3-year-old's preschool closed, and I was still teaching my full course load, and my partner was working, and we were all stuck in the house, and it was literally like every single second of the day was either care work or paid work. And then the 3-year-old would go to bed eventually, and there would be like this magical, hour and a half to 2 hours before we had to crash, and like we would immediately come in to the bedroom where the TV is and turn on Criterion Channel and like watch some masterpiece. And it was like this, it was more than a refuge. It was like where I felt like my selfhood was located during that period of time, was like within those 2 hours when I was intellectually engaging, like artistically engaging, like I felt like a person again in a way that I wasn't the rest of the day. So that was like a really intense and profound experience that, even though the daily experience has changed a lot since those first days, I think that film is, I don't think my relationship to film will ever be the same, because I had that experience of it being just the place where I felt like I was a full person.
That's so
So,
fascinating.
yeah.
Is there actually like a film or films that you can point to that you think first about when through this experience, like that were particularly transformative in this way?
Well, I was looking back because this is also the first time ever that I've made the classic cinephile list of movies that I've seen. I started writing down all the movies I watched. Yes, the first time I ever did that. From the first one we watched, which was The Last Picture Show. I think we were, it was still kind of fun then,
Yeah, there was a novelty to like
Right.
those first couple of weeks.
And then, well, we did all sorts of different stuff. There was like a Pasolini phase, there was a Wim Wenders phase, there was a Chantal Ackerman phase, a Jean Renoir phase. But the movies that stuck out to me that I was thinking about were, not surprisingly, movies that were in some way about like mass social upheaval and alienation. And so the one that came to mind first actually was, I hope I'm not saying his last name wrong, but I might be, Tomás Gutierrez Alea's Memories of Underdevelopment.
Yeah,
was the first one that I thought of. So that was an amazing film, as people probably know, but also really spoke to me, I think, as said a lot of uncomfortable things about being an intellectual in a time of social change. And it was actually during the beginning of the protest movements that I watched that, and it was a very rich and disturbing experience, actually, to see that film at that moment. And then the other one that comes to mind is, actually, speaking of Varda, as we were, Sans toi ni loi, or Vagabond, as it is translated, that I thought about a lot. And then there were two films that were like on the sort of in a very different way, just perfect like escapes from the moment that really still compel me. And the first one is Marcel Carné's Children of Paradise, which I had actually never seen. And the second is Ildiko Niedi's My 20th Century, which I'd also never seen. And those two, in similar ways, right? These are very, sort of fantastical, fanciful films that sort of, invite you to imagine like a kind of alternate, an alternate world. And yeah, so those are the ones that came to mind.
Those are a great choice. Stephen, were there films that stood out for you that way? I mean, out of the hundreds of movies that you clearly...
I meant to count them. I made a list of my favorite new discoveries, but I don't need to read them, and my favorite rewatches. I have to tell you, my favorite rewatches of 2020 is an exceedingly embarrassing list that I will not be revealing. and I put them.
You have to.
Not even a hint.
You have to.
Oh, it's really unfortunate. Let me dip back in, but can I say one thing about sorry, my radiator's being loud. Can you hear me?
No, it's not that. nothing drives me crazier than here. I have a list, but I won't tell you what it is. You can't say those things to documentary people.
Okay, I'm like, well, let's see how the program goes.
Okay. If we earn it, I see.
You can do the list in the second hour.
We can do the list in the second hour. No, I just wanted to say briefly, even though this isn't about specific movies or New Year's stuff, that it's fascinating to hear Shonni talk about this, because Michael, I don't know if you revealed to Shonni that I was a theater major and also have a theater background and made my way to film over time, but that's something we share. And so, but obviously there's like different people have different sort of obviously subjective experiences of finding their way, in this case, from theater to film. And listening to Shonni talk about having a kid and watching these movies is so similar to me at 23, my one lonely year in Manhattan, scooping up DVDs at Tower Records and having the exact same experience that Shonni had this year. And it's like, it's just incredible how we come to similar places at different times. And also I did some Pasolini dives this year too. And so it's funny. And so despite the differences in our journey, we both arrived maybe at some Pasolini movies this year. And it's just like, we're each a novel, right? We're just got this story, these like overlapping narratives. Okay, but
I love that. I love that.
Well, and I appreciate both of you talking about being on a particular arc with a particular filmmaker, because that's something that changed about my viewing habits. I watch a lot, and I'd say that I'm completist, but in a very haphazard way. And as someone who loves a theme, I'm usually more sort of zigzagging. Like I watch this. If I watched Death Becomes Her, then I want to watch. What's the movie where Roseanne is a romance?
She-Devil.
She-Devil. Yeah, that's the way my brain works, as opposed to like, I want to watch everything that's been made by this filmmaker. And that completely changed this year. I found that, I don't know, I think it changed our relationship to time. And so I sort of like unstuck from the way that I was used to thinking and viewing and parceling out my time, where I thought, well, why not watch everything that's accessible to me that's been made by Eric Romer? Now's the moment to do that. And I feel like other people have talked about that you'd go through like a chapter of your life with a particular filmmaker, which I know a lot of cinephiles do already, but to have that, and in a time when you're not interacting in person with your loved ones, like it feels like the most significant engagement with another human that you're having in the time that you're having the Romer chapter or whatever it is.
Totally. I mean, it was really like, I think that is 100% true. I mean, I started to feel like having these like that my relationships to these films was like a relationship to another person that I was having. Like I was experiencing someone else's subjectivity in a way that was totally inaccessible otherwise.
And usually what you're talking about, Farihah, is often it's determined by the calendar of the theaters, right? Because I'll look back on my time in New York and I remember those 3 weeks when I saw Stephen Merritt from the Magnetic Fields everywhere because we were both going to the same Fassbender and Nick Cave. And so
adorable.
I think he thought I was stalking him. He would look at me.
It's like, who's this creep?
It was like it was externally determined for me that it was kind of like, okay, this is the time that you're going to do this. You're going to do Nick and Fassbender's happens to be happening at the same time, so you have to build your life around that. And now we're stuck inside and we don't have that. And so I admire your fortitude to be able to just kind of run down a list, because I find that I am normally that person who does that. But this year, we literally just put all the DVDs and things on the DVR we hadn't watched into an Excel spreadsheet and just had a randomizing function tell us what to watch. And that actually held for the first 6 months of quarantine until theaters again started influencing our lives by what they were programming in virtual cinemas. Like the Ulrika Ottinger retrospective at the Metrograph kind of got us back in the mode of like, okay, they're going to show Joan of Arc and Magnolia on these 3 days. So when are we going to build in time to see this 3.5-hour movie? And so gradually we kind of tried to reorient to the way we used to live, but in our own homes.
Yeah, I feel like it's funny, all of the planning that you build up around this time, like the pandemic, we all kind of instantly started to put up these kind of parameters and rules and regulations around our lives, or we felt like we won't be able to get through this. And I normally do think that way in general. I like to have very structured life, very structured routine. But like the more we did that, the more we thought, well, this actually has nothing to do with the pandemic. This is just this is a way of life, no matter what. Like viewing habits, viewing schedules, the reasons for watching things, reasons for not watching things. It all kind of got mixed up in my head. But it's kind of an illusion. Like there's no reason that these routines can't continue past this time, right? There's no beginning or end date to this.
And that the routine is arbitrary, and accepting that. Like, I think this is the first year that I've forgiven myself for not having seen literally everything ever made on Earth, which is how I feel most of the time. Like, I guess you're wasting your time or you're failing in some way. And the idea of like, how your choice functions in a near vacuum, being meaningful in and of itself, as opposed to like having completed something, was really new for me and valuable.
It's so interesting because I actually feel like, I mean, in a very literal way, I will never duplicate this again, because normally I go to theater regularly, and I wasn't like, so there were actually like real structural changes that enabled this kind of attachment to cinema, to film, I guess, that I didn't have before. So I actually feel, I think that this is maybe something that is different about me than most other reverse shotters, but I think that you know, in a way, there's actually not continuity for me. Like there's something singular about this experience that hopefully will not be duplicated again, because hopefully we'll be able to go see live art.
Can I ask you a brief detour question, Shonni, before we finally make Stephen talk to us about his list?
Is that
Which is where
well, I'm curious. So one of the things that I've thought about is like ways in which other art forms have found a way to survive. And in theater specifically, you know, obviously there are ways in which, weather permitting, there was an engagement in theater and dance with outdoor performance. But there was also a way of making, or of bringing theater to a Zoomable format. Or, you know, dealing with it in more of a recording sense. And it's not like these things haven't happened before, but I think that there was a higher amount of like live performance in a cinematic language. And I wonder, I don't know, if someone like yourself, who has a deeper understanding of theater, if you had any thoughts about what it was like to see it come to the screen so often and have to live in that space.
I mean, I'm really not the best person to answer that question, because I have to say I have been totally uninterested in following theater on screen.
I appreciate the honesty.
No, really. I mean, there's a lot of great stuff happening, and actually, I did just like sign up to do this one interesting piece by 600 Highwaymen. There are two artists who I know and have followed for a long time. But I mean, I think that this was like the dramatic just like shift of my attachment, where I just felt like if I was going to be looking at a screen, I just wanted to see film. I just have no interest personally in those experiments, which is too bad, because they're keeping people. I mean, I don't know how many people they're actually keeping alive, frankly, but like they're like, it is important that people continue to feel attached to theater. But I personally have this feeling that like, there's no way to do it that I want to see. And instead, I'm looking forward to the renaissance of live art that we will hopefully see, you know, when we can gather again. And instead, like for me, you know, using the time to refocus and think about film actually just felt more productive and interesting. So
that was a very telling answer, actually.
Is that?
No, well, and I'll give my short layman's report, which is when it works, it's pretty special. And when it doesn't, you're like, well, we all tried.
Yeah. And it's great. I mean, you know, and frankly, theater is always
there's a lot,
like that, right?
Yeah, sure. But there's definitely, I don't know. I guess I think about this in general, like, because there's so many dancers and choreographers who became filmmakers and who think about the movement of the camera and bring that to a new medium. And I wondered about that more during this past year. Like what happens when you have to make your language fit into that of another, and the successes are like exhilarating and the failures are many.
Yeah.
That's how I felt.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I think, and again, this is like pretty idiosyncratic, but the other like structural thing for me is just that I could never commit to, I mean, it's really hard for me to commit to a particular time just because of like care work and other work. So it was always really, you know, the thing that theater, even on Zoom, would do is you have to go at a particular time. And that was just something that I couldn't do. So actually the on-demand thing was like essential. In a way, which is again, you know, would never be something like, I mean, like Stephen, that would never be something that I would say I would want. But it turned out that it was just necessary.
I just want to point, and I promise I'm not distracting from the discussion at hand and where you people might want to go with this evening. But I just want to point out again these little cosmic connections with what Shonni's saying. I mean, almost all of my friends, you know, or 60% of my friends in Chicago are stage actors. And so, you know, I'm hearing you talk about this, and while I've been watching lots of dear friends for the last 8 months struggle with losing their entire connection to art, and in many cases take their productions onto Zoom, and their theaters, which have to pay their storefront rent somehow, and they've become film actors. And we could do a whole other hour about also just I teach at Northwestern. I'm teaching actors. I'm teaching acting classes on Zoom, and but it's all a movie. It's kind of cool, but it's a wild adjustment, and there's a lot of innovation, but also a lot of pain.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, I don't want to be the one to do this, theater people, but theater kind of sucks. So let's move on to movies. Steve.
Wow.
Actually,
I think Koresky has a whole new persona for 2021, I guess.
Michael, what we're saying is that theater has movies now. So I mean, it's
right. And that is actually really I actually think totally interesting to think about. So even despite my disengagement, I think there's going to be so much like fruitful sort of development of thinking the relationship between media and like thinking about differently, I think, about media after this. So that is actually fascinating and really rich, I think.
Chris asked a good question. And again, we should stop going down these rabbit holes to get away from the thing. But how do we think about Zoom acting as a distinct mode? Let's not go too far into that. But I have to say, I think it's a good question because I did watch the only movie that is entirely on Zoom that I've ever seen this year, which was the horror movie Host, which I thought was absolutely delightful and completely terrifying. And there's something about it's because it's in real time. It's a seance. It's only an hour long, but there's something about this constricting frame that can be really, really terrifying. You don't see anything past that. There's no chance for a track shot. There's no chance for supposedly set up lighting. It's just, it is what it is, and you're completely trapped there. And I thought that movie actually reflected a lot of how I was feeling this year as well. So
the new Dogma.
Yeah, the new Dogma is just sitting here while ghosts jump around behind it.
So what you're saying is your resolution for this coming year is more all Zoom movies all the time.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Only natural lighting, only static shots.
Only static shots.
I think we talked about this last time I did this. Do you talk about this every time?
Or that movie specifically?
No, because I remember talking about Unfriended and what the possibilities were. It's interesting that now, Michael, that you have engaged with some of the material and have in an interesting place.
I would love to move away from that, and I would love to hear more about your list that everybody is dying to hear about.
It's turning into a drinking game.
Yeah, I know. I have to say, I don't like that I can see the chat on these things.
You can close it, just don't look at it.
Wait, what?
No, it pops up. It pops up.
I'm just when you said that you were embarrassed or mortified by your list of rewatches. I don't know what that means.
Let me take a step back. Let me take a step back and just say that in the good part of the list, my first time watches, which is a very exciting list, and which I can provide for anyone at any time, gladly read. I just want to say I looked at it to try to discern some sort of theme that emerged, and there's no theme. I mean, it was totally random, but I do remember at the beginning of the whole deal saying I want to watch a bunch of submarine movies. And I did that at the beginning, and I found that a very exciting exercise. But after that point, I stopped. No, everything on this rewatch list, and these are not the only movies that I rewatched. I rewatched a lot of favorites. I rewatched things that challenged me. and okay, but I went through today and I bolded. No, I'm sorry. I bolded the new to me's. I italicized the rewatches.
Yes,
they were all extremely popular movies that came out between the 70s and the 2000s. And well, now I've set it up. It's not that ridiculous. I will say Shrek is on this list.
Explain your response, Jeff.
That was actually more embarrassing than I expected.
Wait a minute. Shrek, I don't know. Shrek is a great comedy. Like it is one of the only, I haven't laughed that hard. I may not have laughed that hard in all of 2020. And I want to give that to Shrek. And I look forward to the sequels.
Good for you.
Can I just ask, has anyone on this panel read the book Shrek lately? Because I read it almost every night.
There's a book?
Oh, guys. Okay. It's a children's book by William Steig, who is an amazing, bizarre, super dark children's book writer. And it's actually like, it's an incredible, hilarious book that you should all order and read for your own edification. And
I've heard that. I have heard that. I have Smash Mouth in my head now.
I just want you to know, Stephen, I know that you're looking at the chat.
Looking at the chat.
It's a safe space.
List, exclamation point, longest drum roll ever. I'm on the edge of my seat right now. And then once you announced Shrek, yes, in all caps. So
That's great. That's great. I see the first few words of every chat, and I take a feeling from it, and then I move back to the main.
You're like, Farihah, I'm an artist, and I am refracting this experience through the lens of my art.
Okay, this is not all embarrassing, but just for the purposes of what we're dealing now, I want to say that I rewatched the first two I Know What You Did Last Summer movies, and my takeaway was that they were very pure and maybe even beautiful. And I don't know why, I felt that way, but I felt that way.
I saw that at a very important time in my life, the first one.
I've rewatched the first one this past year as well, and I feel like there's something about it. It's not perfect, but it's sort of like the first Indiana Jones movie. Like it does something perfectly in exactly the mode that it should be in.
That's a really.
I agree.
But Raiders of the Lost Ark also on my list. Funny you should say that. But that prompted me to watch Urban Legend, which is also very pure, not as beautiful. Not very pure. Fine.
Medium pure.
It's fine, but it made the list. I italicized it.
Right.
I know. What is this word pure? What does pure mean?
I actually think a lot in, I veer back and forth, but I've realized here's another movie I would call pure, Joe Dante's Piranha. And I think that there are moments in my life where I'm just hungry for, and I wish there was more great, for lack of a better word, exploitation, because I think exploitation at its best is an extremely pure and beautiful thing. And so I think lump I Know What You Did Last Summer and Piranha into that category. I would say the same, actually. I actually didn't remember seeing the first Nightmare on Elm Street, and I did that too, and was quite taken trying to find. Oh, Bug's Life holds up. That's a side note. Penny Marshall's Big is on my list.
Genre can be pure.
Stop. First of all, Penny Marshall's Big I also rewatched, and I found extremely disturbing this time. It's a very disturbing movie. Very.
I thought it made me laugh, and I found it quite good.
It's about a mother who thinks that her son has been kidnapped, and she has to live with this, and she's distraught and horrified, and it's one of the most distributing things I've ever seen.
Would you describe it as impure?
I think it's good. I like it. I just took it as a very like a horror film this time. So,
I might need to link to Colette's novel, The Pure and the Impure, right now.
Resolutions.
Just to make sure, because this is such a fantastic conversation. What have we learned from these experiences? With Big, Piranha, and Zoom acting. I don't know. And what are we going to do in 2021? What are our New Year's movie resolutions? I have some. I don't know if I want to share them yet, though, because I'm a little.
I'll share one. I want to spend time watching the Kuchar Brothers films. What?
You've been doing that.
I mean, but I just started. I've seen like 3 of hundreds, and it feels like there are always gaps in your film knowledge, right? You can never fill every gap because new gaps will always open up for you. But over the past few weeks, I've happened to come across some Kuchar Brothers programs, one at the Metrograph, one that I rented online by Anthology, the Death Quests of the Juju Cult, which is a 30-minute black and white thing, which is just quite exceptional. And it just feels like a kind of place in a headspace that I want to be in this year. Those are films that are pure. Everything I've seen from them so far.
Also thinking about acting. I mean, thinking so much about theater and theatricality.
Or performance, if you will.
No, I won't. I will not. I will insist on the word acting.
acting a version of yourself very self-consciously, and wanting that version of self to disappear as an idea separate from one's self, not on screen.
I mean,
that was just for you, Shonni. I would never be that verbose normally. But I want to take a minute, because you brought up the Kuchar brothers, to say that I think that John Wilson, as an artist and filmmaker, shares some DNA with the Kuchar brothers.
Oh, yes.
And I think that those of you who are enjoying How To with John Wilson should also go to find his short films. It's actually like mind-blowing that this became a show on HBO and was greenlit by HBO. So go seek out his other work. And I think, you know, going back to, I guess, the zigzag mentality, the a Kuchar John Wilson double bill would be a great journey through time and acting of self.
And add on the other end of that bell, make it a triple bell and do Jack Smith. And then we're back to theater.
Mm-hmm.
So that's not great online, but anyway.
And I would just say, again, everything we're saying could be its own hour, but I would propose that in the Kuchar brothers' work is kind of the key to where Zoom acting could go. I mean, there is a lot in those sort of like the Jack Smith and the Canyon, you know, the San Francisco. I'm just saying words because I remember that. I can't even say.
I know where you're at.
We're with you.
But yeah, you know, that community is like, you know, because the fear or the risk is that Zoom, the traditional notion of Zoom potential can die out in like 2 weeks. I mean, you know, and then you're like, okay, now we have a formula already. But you know, for me, doing acting over Zoom has been like, this is incredible. I mean, occasionally you even get a sister in the background walking through. You know, it's like it's an incredible thing. I did want to say one thing about like, and this again, this is becoming confession. This is my purpose here. But what I would like. Honestly, I got, in a really embarrassing way, got sucked into cable news this year in a horrifying, horrific way. And I would watch the same segments over and over. And I would start, and I realized I knew not the birthdays, but I knew the ages of and full names of anchors. And I would watch these things, and today I thought, okay, next year I need to spend more time watching movies than cable news, which seems like a very low bar, but for me it's gotta, because it is very easy to just like put it on the background. It fries your brain a little bit, and then you just sort of stare at it, and you could have had it on TCM all day. I mean, you know, it's like so even though I watched a lot of movies, I mean,
in and around the election time, I felt the same. I would turn on the news, and all of a sudden 7 hours would have passed, and I'd have just been sitting there with my computer checking different news sources. So I get it.
Computer, phone, cable.
It was a rough year for that.
Yeah,
we had to. Anyway,
I need to turn it. I mean, it's so easy to just turn a TCM or put in a movie, you know, and or read.
What?
Well, you have to have a special time with each of us.
Everyone like blushed a little and looked away when you mentioned reading.
Stephen, what is one of your New Year's movie resolutions?
That's it, to watch less cable news.
That's it? You can do that.
No, I mean, that's the one.
I think that's a big one. I think that's a really big one that like looks at your viewing habits and the reality.
And you're replacing it with.
But I will say I'll pair it with, for whatever reason, I didn't watch as many new movies and movies by my peers this year. And I don't I maybe don't feel totally bad about it, but I also kind of feel bad about it and feel like there is a way to engage maybe a little more with what's being made now. And I didn't do that in 2020. And I say this sincerely, I would like in 2021 to engage more with movies that have been made in the last 2 years, to be honest.
That was close to mine too, actually.
Well, which is what? Elaborate on it.
Yeah, well, I mean, yeah, just think more about movies that are made about the recent past and are thinking about the present, and also, I mean, I'm going to try to keep the movie watching going, which this was also the year that I like turned away from TV, like watched almost no TV. And one of the ways I did that was like allowing myself to watch half of a movie, which is really necessary when you have a 3-year-old who gets up at 6, and so it being okay to turn off the movie halfway was like essential. And then I realized that once I let myself do that, I could watch that instead of TV. It was like, that was like the key, was allowing that. So we're on like night 3 of Fanny and Alexander tonight, and that's fine.
Is that the miniseries or the theatrical?
The theatrical one.
Okay. Either way, that's acceptable as a long film. But I agree with you. I used to feel like it was some sort of blasphemy to ever watch things in pieces or turn them off. And I still tried not to, but out of necessity, sometimes you got to squeeze it in that way.
I still can't do it. And not because I think it's wrong, but because I just can't. Like a child in bed reading with your flashlight. Yeah, you're like, well, just an hour and 15 minutes more. Zaman.
I struggle.
Do it.
I struggle with that too. And I find that I can't do it with every kind of movie, but I can if it's an old favorite that I've seen a bunch of times. Or if it's like, like a Raoul Walsh movie that I like, am not dying to see, but kind of want to see, I'm totally happy to watch the first 45 minutes and then watch the rest of in the morning. And then you get to see more movies. That's the upside.
Yeah, exactly.
For me, it's about viewing methods. I've always been very stuck in my ways. So one of the things that I'm going to try to be better about, because I think it'll make me more well-rounded in what I watch, because I know that might sound silly, but I really have over the last year, I have tended towards watching older things. And I've always prided myself, and I think it's important for what I do to be up on the latest things. And because of festivals, and I've seen a great deal of stuff. I have, but I don't gravitate towards them when it's not work. So one of the reasons for that is that I'm still very opposed to watching movies on my computer. And I know that sounds ridiculous, because that's how you can access things better. That's how you can find little corners, and you can put your headphones on. You can watch any number of amazing things that are available now. But I've always had a real issue with that. I want to watch things on a large television or in a theater. So I'm in the continued absence of theaters, and also because of like a new living arrangement, I think where we live and our relationships, our spaces have so much to do with how we watch, and we don't talk about that enough. So we moved in this particular new living arrangement. It would just be much better and more conducive for me and everyone if I just like bit the bullet, put a movie on my computer, put headphones in my ears, and watch something late at night after Chris has gone to bed. I mean, for me, it still feels wrong some way. I hate watching movies on my laptop, but I think I have to get over it. So that's my...
Get Bluetooth headphones and plug it into your television, and then you can watch anything you want.
Bluetooth headphones with this TV?
Probably. We'll talk offline.
Thanks, tech support.
I have an old TV. I'm just telling you.
But Michael, what you're saying is so, sorry if I'm going to jump in, but there's a
sorry, not sorry.
He's been pushing for that already. This is not a new thing.
I want to hear.
No, it's just the idea that, because we spent a year where in order to see people, we have to be on our computers like this. The last thing you want to do is to watch a movie in the same space. It's never been something I would prefer anyway. But the idea that, and I think that as a result, like, this becomes the best way of seeing new films. And if this is the thing that we're looking to avoid, and we want to go to that big screen in the living room, and it's harder to sort of get the computer hooked up. It's a pain in the ass where you just, like, I find myself watching TCM. Where it's like the least work possible. I'm either watching.
Cable news is the least work possible. What
is?
Cable news.
Yeah, that's the least work.
It's a different kind of work. It's all too much work.
Awful.
And I appreciate that. I like encountering things that way, and I like sort of just, okay, you're showing me this. I've seen it before, but I'm going to watch half an hour. Like Shonni's saying, that there's a way in which you give yourself permission to watch things in peace if you're just turning on the television and if it's on live.
Sorry.
No, go ahead, Stephen.
No, I was just going to say it's funny to me, the irony of, because I actually I don't need to watch a lot of films on my computer, but so the irony in listening to y'all talk about this is that the most movies I ever watched on a laptop was in 2003, when I was in a tiny 6x6 Manhattan bedroom, scared out of my wits, not knowing whether I was in the right place or not, what I was going to do with my life, and being a little scared of my roommates, and just going to get those Tower Records DVDs and sitting on my bed, which was the bottom bunk of my childhood bed, and watching Beau Travail and Taste of Cherry for the first time on my computer. So my formative days were on a laptop 17 years ago. And so it's interesting context, I guess.
But why do I have that barrier, considering that most of my cinephilic movie watching was done on a 13-inch television with a VCR in my bedroom? But I have this. I think that's the way to watch a movie.
But your entire social life wasn't happening through the same device.
It's true.
Well, that's another thing.
I'll say that while I very much, I like a range. So obviously I very much miss a big screen experience, and not just at a drive-in. I miss like being in a weird dark room with a bunch of other people that you can't see and being enveloped by the screen. But I will also confess, Steven, so you're not alone, an unpopular opinion, which is like especially as a person like living alone at a time with when our like social interactions have totally reformed, or not, that I've enjoyed the intimacy of like a screen in bed.
Yeah,
that,
it's
like,
a very particular experience.
Yeah, like creating this
very
cocoon,
intimate.
and that's like enveloping in a different way. If you can't feel enveloped because of the size of the screen, you can be enveloped because of your proximity to the screen or your personal circumstances. I think that the most viewing I've done is like at the end of a workday in bed with my laptop, even though I have other bigger screen options, or like having something on while I make dinner or do an endless amount of dishes that somehow appear for a single person. And that is like a relationship with viewing on my laptop that is increased, and that I'm kind of not upset about.
I want to get to that point. I want to be comfortable with that. It actually sounds really nice the way you describe it. I want to curl up with a good movie in bed. I've never done that before.
Just try to put the laptop down when you're falling asleep.
Does anybody
That's all I'll say.
Does anybody watch movies in bed on their phone?
Too small.
Sometimes
and you got to hold it up.
Too small. You got to hold it.
You get an extra pillow.
You're getting text.
I don't have any additional thumb strength to spare at the end of a long day.
Steven?
I just to clarify, I haven't done this in 17 years. So now you're making me interested in, but I do have a theory that maybe, Michael, maybe it's the sleekness of the Macs and how often we spend on it that might make it feel a little chilly, like a less engaging thing. In the old days of 2002, when I was watching Beau Travail on a Dell laptop, I wasn't spending as much time on it as I do on a Mac. So it had very few purposes. And now it has its all purpose, and I think that makes it less interesting.
Right, movies are supposed to be an escape.
Well, what we're talking about, though, I mean, which is I find really interesting, is that the ways that movies are integrated in our daily lives have really changed, and so some of us still hang on to separation or detachment, right? I mean, I wouldn't use the word escape. I would sort of use the word like separation, like a separate kind of space, or a separate apparatus that you're interacting with. But it seems like a lot of us are also noting that like the new way that film might be integrated in our daily lives sort of behooves a different medial approach.
Yeah, it's also worth saying that everything becomes quaint, like and comfortable. And one day we'll look back on this conversation. It'll seem very old-fashioned to have a Mac in your lap in bed, it'll see.
Well, and also we'll look back at this video and we'll say, look at the terrible quality of Zoom. What's with, like we'll be in some sort of like, holographic reality where we could just beam ourselves and we'll say,
there'll be some sort of effect we can put on it to make it look like this.
Yeah, right, exactly.
That's so depressing.
360-degree magnificent ambersands. We don't even need to look at a screen. We're just living it.
But I was going to say, but Stephen, you made me nostalgic of realizing the first DVD player I had was an iMac. That I got an iMac in '99, and it came with Ants with the Z. And
Ants hold up.
It came with Ants. And my first ever DVD purchase was the Criterion Brazil box.
Can I just say that Ants and Bug's Life both came up today in independent of each other. But that is
and
it wasn't an accident. It wasn't an accident.
Very unexpected.
But, hey, Bug's Life is really good.
Cinema 2020.
I should have put that in the. I should have advertised that way. Today's happy hour. Ants, A Bug's Life, and Shrek.
And submarine movies. K-19, The Widowmaker.
Was that one of the submarine movies you watched?
No, I have, but I've seen it. But was it U571?
Right.
Oh, right.
But just about A Bug's Life quickly. I just want to say I had a very unusual experience at watching it this year because I was watching it in the middle of a Saturday when my brain was at, I would say peak, and I had trouble keeping up with all of it. And it made me long for the days when so much was happening. It's actually dense. It's dense, and I felt like in it, I thought, am I losing some of my capacity, because it's very fast and furious and very smart, and
Fast and Furious is definitely a Pixar way of being. I had a hard time with Soul, not that we have to go down that rabbit hole, but
I'm talking about the good side, the positive I mean it more in the Buster Keaton way, or the just like one thing after another that's just totally inventive, but I made me kind of feel like, I was like, why is this cartoon making me feel like an idiot?
That's how I felt about Soul, actually, but not in a good way.
But again, I mean it in a good way. But yes,
there is an interesting thing that kids' movies do, like of that genre do, that is trying to. It's like straining to speak parental. It's actually very odd.
I will say that Ants, in retrospect, may have been the last gasp of the 20th century, in that its entire cast are people who have their heyday was the 20th century, not the 21st century. If you thought back who's actually in that film and voicing it, it is a who's who of people who basically faded almost immediately. Hello.
Hey,
it's a new guest. Welcome.
Hey.
I was going to suggest we toast to the future, and this just got very literal.
Rafi, we're going to toast to the future.
What about Rafi's resolutions for viewing in 2021?
Okay, so we've gone over time, you guys.
I know, it's
we started late. We have to toast.
Quick shout out to the reverse shotters in the audience: Chris Wisniewski, Julian Allen, Mark Lukenbill, Ryan Swen, Chloe Lazat, and Leo Goldsmith. And what are we drinking to? What are we toasting to?
Future.
See you next week. Thank you so much, Stephen and Shonni, for being here.
Short and long-term future next week and beyond.
My pleasure. Thanks, y'all.
Thanks, guys.
Nice to see you both. Cheers.
Cheers.